Most people think the hardest part of life is getting rich. They're wrong. The real challenge is staying sane after you get rich. I've seen hundreds of people make fortunes. I've seen just as many lose their minds after doing it. The money didn't destroy them, their stupidity did. They thought success meant freedom. In reality, it exposed every weakness they had. Greed, ego, envy, alcohol, you name it. Wealth just gave those flaws a bigger stage. You want to stay sane in a world where everyone is chasing more? Then start by inverting the problem. Don't ask, how can I be successful? Ask instead, what will make me fail? And then simply avoid those things. That's been my whole life philosophy. Invert, always invert. Avoid stupidity before chasing brilliance. Avoid ruin before chasing glory. You'll be surprised how far that gets you. Now, let me tell you something obvious that most people ignore. The people who end up miserable usually walk straight into the traps they could see coming. They drink too much, gamble too much, show off too much, and then they wonder why they're unhappy. When I was young, I tried to smoke cigarettes because that's what the cool kids did. It made me sick, so I quit right there. I said to myself, the hell with this. Nobody is going to lure me into a goddamn thing. That's how you stay sane, by refusing to do stupid things just to fit in. I watched the same pattern with alcohol. There were enough alcoholics in my own family to teach me what liquor can do. I drank sometimes, sure. Even overdid it once or twice. But the moment I threw up, I learned my lesson. That nausea was my education. Pain is a hell of a teacher if you're smart enough to listen. You don't need to be a genius to live well. You just have to notice what ruins other people and don't copy it. It sounds simple because it is simple. What's hard is resisting the herd when everyone else is doing dumb things with confidence. Take houses, for example. I've lived in the same damn house for about 60 years. Meanwhile, I've watched my friends get rich and build mansions, and almost every single one of them got less happy after doing it. A fancy house looks impressive, but it comes with a fancy set of problems: maintenance, envy, social pressure. It doesn't make you happier. It just makes you busy. A simple house gives you peace. A complicated one gives you headaches. That's not philosophy. That's observation. So if you want to stay sane while getting rich, simplify your life. Not because you're a monk, but because clutter clouds judgment. You can't think clearly when you're surrounded by noise, distractions, and people competing for status. Now, I'll admit something. I could have done better. A lot better. If I'd been smarter, quicker, or started earlier, I might have had trillions instead of billions. That's a fact. But I don't sit around crying about it. Regret is for people who don't understand probability. You can't win every game. You just have to avoid going broke. The trick is not to chase perfection. It's to avoid disaster. And most disasters in life are self-inflicted. The older I got, the more I realized that sanity is a form of wealth, a rare one. You can compound money, but you can also compound peace of mind by not screwing up over and over again. That's what I call rational living. Not glamorous, not exciting, but very effective. Stay sober, stay frugal, stay independent in thought, and most importantly, stay alert to your own stupidity, because the world is full of smart people doing dumb things, and nothing destroys a fortune faster than losing your mind. So if you really want to be rich, start by protecting your sanity. Money comes and goes, but once you lose your mind, you can't buy it back. That's the truth no one likes to hear. But reality doesn't care whether you like it or not. It just keeps teaching the same lesson to the few who are still sane enough to learn it. When I was young, I noticed something curious. The smartest people I knew weren't always the ones getting ahead. It was the people who simply avoided doing stupid things over and over again. You don't have to be brilliant to succeed. You just have to consistently not be stupid. That's what invert, always invert, really means. Most people attack life forward. They ask, how can I be happy? How can I be rich? I ask the opposite. What will make me miserable? What will make me poor? Then I avoid those. It's like golf. You don't have to hit perfect shots all the time. You just have to avoid the bunkers and the water. Life works the same way. Stay out of trouble, and time will do most of the compounding for you. When you invert, you stop chasing fantasies and start seeing reality. You realize that almost all disasters in life are self-inflicted. Debt, envy, alcohol, overconfidence, these are the usual suspects. You see someone go broke? It wasn't the stock market. It was their behavior in the stock market. You see someone ruin a marriage. It wasn't fate. It was poor judgment, lust, greed, arrogance. Invert it, and you'll see the pattern. Most of life's misery comes from ignoring what's obviously dangerous. I remember one guy, smart, charming, could quote Shakespeare and Keynes in the same sentence, but he couldn't resist leverage. He'd borrow money to make sure bets, and when one of those bets went bad, he lost everything. Not because he wasn't clever, but because he was too clever. He thought the rules didn't apply to him. That's the deadliest illusion of all, believing you're the exception. You're not. I'm not. Nobody is. Reality doesn't care how smart you are. It punishes arrogance with precision. It's very patient. It waits until your confidence is at its peak, then it takes everything. That's why I've spent my life avoiding leverage. No margin calls, no sleepless nights. If I make a mistake, I want to survive it. That's what staying sane means. You can't eliminate risk, but you can avoid stupidity. And stupidity loves company. It thrives in crowds, especially during booms. In 1999, everyone thought the internet was going to make them billionaires. I told them, maybe it will, but you'll probably lose your mind before you make your money. They laughed. Then the crash came, and the laughter stopped. Same story, different year. The faces change, the behavior doesn't. Inversion works because it forces you to see what's real, not what's popular. The crowd chases what shines. The wise avoid what burns. You don't have to predict the future to win. Just identify the things that consistently destroy people and walk the other way. Think of it this way. If you never smoke, you won't die of lung cancer. If you never use debt recklessly, you won't go bankrupt. If you never envy others, you won't make foolish comparisons. Avoid the downside, and the upside will take care of itself. That's what Buffett and I have done all our lives. We never tried to be the smartest guys in the room. We just tried not to be the dumbest. And that's harder than it sounds, because stupidity is seductive. It's easy, it's exciting, it's everywhere. It comes disguised as opportunity, innovation, or once-in-a-lifetime chances. People chase them because they think missing out is worse than losing. But missing out never ruined anyone's life. Losing everything did. The older I got, the more I realized wisdom isn't adding new ideas, it's discarding bad ones. Knowledge is subtraction, not accumulation. You get smarter by cutting the nonsense out of your head. That's what invert really means. It's a mental filter. Before you do anything, ask, what could go wrong if I'm wrong? If the answer is everything, then don't do it. So, if you want to get rich and stay sane, here's the secret. Don't chase brilliance, chase clarity. Don't look for the next big thing, look for the next big mistake to avoid. Because while everyone else is rushing toward trouble, the calm, rational man quietly compounds his peace and his wealth. And that's the difference between rich and wrecked. The dumbest disease in modern life is thinking more equals better. More money, more cars, more houses, more everything. People build bigger cages and call it success. When you're young and broke, you dream of having enough. Then you get enough, and suddenly it's not enough anymore. That's how the trap begins. I've seen it happen to every social class. A man makes his first million, and he's still nervous. He tells himself, I'll relax once I hit 10. At 10, he needs 50. At 50, he wants 100. By the time he gets there, he's an anxious old fool who can't stop checking the scoreboard. He didn't get rich, he got addicted. And addiction, whether to alcohol or to status, is the same disease of the mind. It hijacks reason. I never wanted to live like that. So I built guardrails early. One of them was this house I'm sitting in. Same house, same address, for 6 decades. People ask, Charlie, why didn't you move to a mansion? Because I'm not an idiot. I've seen what those mansions do to people. They spend years designing them, then years maintaining them, and the rest of their lives trying to fill them with people who don't really care about them. It's an endless treadmill, powered by envy. When I watch someone build a $10 million home just to impress dinner guests, I think, you could have bought yourself peace, and you chose anxiety. A small, functional house teaches humility. A giant one teaches nothing except how to waste. You want to stay sane while getting rich? Then learn to stop upgrading every time you earn more. Because the moment you tie your happiness to lifestyle, you've handed your peace over to the market. If your satisfaction depends on external applause, you're a slave no matter your net worth. People think rich men like me live to impress. No, the real freedom is not given a damn. You can't buy that feeling. You earn it through restraint. Buffett and I never wanted private jets or 10 villas. We wanted control over our time. We wanted to read quietly, think clearly, and sleep peacefully. And you can't do that if your life looks like a circus. Most people don't understand how dangerous luxury is. It dulls the senses. It makes you soft. It replaces gratitude with expectation. I've watched friends buy every toy money could buy, boats, art, penthouses, and end up less content than when they started. Because they lost the one thing that mattered: simplicity. If you can't enjoy life in a modest home, surrounded by a few people you love, then no palace will fix you. It'll just make your emptiness echo louder. And when emptiness meets ego, sanity goes out the window. You know why I still eat simple food, drive simple cars, and keep a plain routine? Because it keeps me close to reality. And reality is the best therapist I know. I don't need to impress anyone. I just need to avoid stupidity. That alone makes life bearable. Lifestyle inflation is the quiet killer of happiness. It doesn't strike suddenly, it creeps in like rust. One upgrade here, one indulgence there. Soon your wants outrun your income, no matter how high it is. Then you start taking risks you shouldn't take just to maintain the illusion of progress. And that's how intelligent people go broke. Not from bad ideas, but from good ideas taken too far. People think self-discipline is boring, but to me it's the highest form of power. You can't be rational if you're enslaved by desire. And most people are they call it ambition. I call it insanity with better marketing. Here's the truth. If you can't stop wanting more, you'll never know peace. If you can't say no, success will eat you alive. I've seen billionaires destroy themselves chasing an extra zero on a balance sheet. You'd think they'd be happy. They weren't. They were restless. Because when enough disappears from your vocabulary, you'll never win the game. You'll only change the stakes. The best way to stay sane is to learn the art of stopping. Stop upgrading. Stop comparing. Stop mistaking movement for progress. When you reach enough, that's when you've actually made it. But most people blow past that point without even noticing. They think they're climbing. In truth, they're falling just on a very expensive staircase. So if you want a real rule for staying sane while getting rich, here it is. You don't need more. You need less but better chosen. Ego is the silent tax on intelligence. The smarter you are, the more you pay if you don't control it. I've met a lot of bright people in my life. Lawyers, bankers, CEOs, professors, brilliant minds, terrible outcomes. Why? Because they thought the rules of gravity didn't apply to them. They looked at failure and said, that happens to other people. And that's exactly when failure started walking their way. You see, ego whispers something seductive. It says, you're different, you're smarter, you won't make the same mistakes. But reality doesn't care how clever your self-talk sounds. I once knew a man who built a small fortune trading real estate. Then he decided he was invincible. He borrowed money, built castles of debt, and strutted around like a genius. When the market turned, he was wiped out completely. Not because he lacked talent, because he couldn't imagine being wrong. That's the curse of success. It tricks you into thinking you can't lose. And once you believe that, you've already started losing. Ego doesn't announce itself. It hides behind confidence, ambition, or vision. But watch closely, and you'll see the signs people stop listening, stop questioning, stop doubting. That's when arrogance takes the wheel. And arrogance always crashes the car. Buffett and I have made plenty of mistakes. But one thing we've done right is admitting when we're idiots early and loudly. We don't defend stupidity, we fix it. That's how you stay alive in this business and in life. If you want to stay sane, learn to say these 4 words. I might be wrong. They're the cheapest insurance policy you'll ever buy. The moment you think you're bulletproof, you're standing in front of the firing squad. Most people don't fail from ignorance, they fail from ego. They know the risk, but they ignore it because it doesn't fit their self-image. They'd rather be right than rich. They'd rather defend pride than protect peace. And that's why humility is underrated. It's not weakness, it's survival. The ability to bow before reality is what separates those who last from those who vanish. I've seen men who made fortunes in oil, real estate, tech, you name it, go broke, simply because they couldn't downshift their ego after success. They believed the applause was proof of genius, but applause fades. Results don't. The truth is, nobody is as smart as they think they are, including me. And life has a brutal way of reminding you. I learned that lesson early. During my law career, I thought I could outthink everyone. Then I watched ordinary people with discipline and patience beat brilliant ones with flair and arrogance. That's when I realized temperament beats talent. Every time. People who can control their impulses will always outperform those who can't control their egos. Ego makes you chase the wrong game. Instead of asking, is this wise? You ask, will this make me look good? And once you start performing for the crowd, you've lost the plot. I've seen people in business make decisions just to prove a point. They'd rather go broke with pride than prosper with humility. I can't think of anything dumber. If you're trying to get rich and stay sane, you have to see ego for what it is, a parasite that feeds on praise. The more people admire you, the hungrier it gets. That's why I avoid being surrounded by yes men. A good partner is someone who tells you when you're being stupid. That's what Buffett and I give each other, honesty without ego. When you have a friend who can call you an idiot and you thank him for it, you're doing something right. So here's a rule you can tattoo on your brain. Whenever you start feeling like you're the smartest person in the room, leave that room immediately. Because either you're in the wrong place or you're about to do something dumb. Ego is the easiest way to lose both money and sanity. It doesn't ruin you all at once. It just makes you stop learning, one smug thought at a time. And the day you stop learning, you've started dying. So when people ask me how to stay sane while getting rich, I tell them this. Don't fall for the illusion of being special. Be curious, be humble, be cautious. Reality is undefeated. It always collects its debts, especially from the proud. People obsess over compounding returns, but they forget that stupidity compounds faster than money ever will. You make one dumb decision, and it invites 2 more, then 4, then 8. Before you know it, you're knee-deep in consequences and wondering what the hell happened. Most disasters don't begin with one catastrophic mistake. They begin with a tiny lapse of judgment repeated over time. You don't lose everything overnight. You erode it slowly by not paying attention. That's why avoiding stupidity is an art form. It's quiet, unglamorous, and brutally effective. The newspapers never write headlines like "Man avoids ruin for 50 years." But that's the real story of a successful life. You don't need brilliance. You need endurance. And endurance comes from not stepping on obvious landmines. In business, stupidity often disguises itself as excitement. People chase the next big thing, the next revolution, the next shiny object. I call it the stupidity premium you pay extra for the thrill of being foolish. When everyone's euphoric, step back. When everyone's scared, step in carefully. It's not complicated, it's just hard to do because your brain hates boredom. But boredom is where sanity lives. The people who get rich slowly are the ones who can handle doing nothing when there's nothing intelligent to do. They don't need action to feel alive. They let patience do the heavy lifting. Buffett and I have spent decades doing what most people can't, sitting still. We wait for the obvious bets, the kind you could explain to a fifth grader. We don't predict. We don't gamble. We don't delude ourselves into thinking we're smarter than the crowd. We just wait until the odds are heavily in our favor. That's not genius. That's self-control. But people hate that answer. They want complexity. They want secrets. They want some edge that others don't have. Here's the edge. Don't be stupid. You'd be amazed how rare that is. I once said that the best way to be smart is to consistently not be dumb. And I meant it. The world is full of people trying to outsmart each other. Meanwhile, the quiet ones who simply avoid the obvious traps end up owning everything. Let me give you a simple example. Two investors start with the same capital. One tries to double it every year through risky bets. The other compounds steadily at 10%. Who wins? The steady one, because the first eventually blows up. That's the math of stupidity. It doesn't forgive. Most of life works like investing. Survival first, growth second. And you don't survive by being clever. You survive by being careful. That's why I've always said it's not supposed to be easy. If it were easy, idiots would win. And the universe isn't that generous. Avoiding stupidity means checking your impulses. It means saying no far more often than yes. It means knowing when to stop and stopping early. You don't have to swing at every pitch. You just need to wait for when you understand and then hit it hard. People forget that doing nothing is a decision. And often it's the smartest one. If you can master the art of not reacting, you'll outlast almost everyone. Because most people self-destruct through overreaction. They let emotion run their financial and personal lives. Anger, greed, envy, those are all expensive emotions. They cloud judgment, speed up stupidity, and slow down compounding. I once said the first rule of compounding is never interrupt it unnecessarily. That applies to money and sanity. Every time you chase a distraction, argue with a fool, or indulge in vanity, you interrupt your own compounding process. You burn mental energy you could have used for thinking. Avoiding stupidity isn't glamorous. You won't get applause for saying, "I passed on that deal." But applause doesn't pay dividends, peace of mind does. The people who end up with quiet wealth and steady happiness aren't the ones who took wild risks. They're the ones who quietly sidestepped disasters for 50 years. And if you think that sounds boring, good. Boring is underrated. Boring keeps you sane. Boring keeps you rich. You don't need to do more. You need to do fewer dumb things. Because every act of restraint saves you from 10 acts of regret. So, the next time you feel the urge to act clever, pause and ask, is this smart or just exciting? If it's the latter, walk away. Remember, money compounds. Wisdom compounds. But stupidity compounds faster. And the interest rate on ignorance is brutal. Pain is a hell of a teacher if you pay attention. Most people don't. They feel pain, then rush to forget it. That's why they never learn. Every bit of wisdom I have came with discomfort attached. You think you learn from success? Not really. Success just confirms your habits, good and bad. Pain, on the other hand, demands a correction. When I was a teenager, I tried to smoke cigarettes. I wanted to be one of the cool kids. I lit one, inhaled, and nearly vomited. That was it. I quit the same day. I remember thinking, if I have to train myself to be miserable just to fit in, I'm too dumb to live. Bep. That one nauseating moment probably saved my life. Most people would have powered through the nausea. They'd say, I'll get used to it. And that's exactly what ruins them. They get used to stupidity. The world is full of people who've adapted to misery and call it normal. They keep doing things that make them sick financially, emotionally, physically, just because everyone else is doing it. I refuse to play that game. The moment something made me feel rotten, I took it as a warning from nature. Stop. The same thing happened with liquor. I drank too much once, got drunk, and threw up. That nausea taught me more about moderation than any sermon ever could. You don't have to be perfect to be wise. You just have to listen when life slaps you in the face. But here's the problem. Most people numb themselves. They drink over the hangover. They double down after a bad investment. They blame the market, their boss, their spouse, anyone but themselves. You can't learn that way. Denial is the enemy of growth. If something hurts, the correct question isn't, why me? It's, what did I just learn? That's how wisdom compounds. I've watched people repeat the same mistake for decades because they never analyzed their own pain. They wanted the reward, not the responsibility. Pain is feedback. It's the invoice reality sends you for being wrong. Pay it and you get smarter. Ignore it and you'll keep getting billed with interest. I learned early that self-inflicted pain was the most valuable kind because it was honest. When I screwed up, I couldn't blame anyone else. I had to fix my thinking. That's the essence of personal responsibility, treating pain as a signal, not an injustice. The irony is, people want a painless life. But a painless life produces soft minds. You can't sharpen steel without friction. You think resilience comes from comfort? No. It comes from small doses of failure you survived without lying to yourself. My entire investing career is built on the scars of mistakes. We lost money on dumb ideas, but we learned. We never made the same mistake twice. Buffett and I talk about this all the time, how crucial it is to have the right kind of pain. Not the pain of chaos, but the pain of discipline. Not the pain of stupidity, but the pain of growth. One hurts your ego. The other builds your character. Most people choose the first one. Pain, properly understood, is information. It tells you where your assumptions failed. It's the universe marking your test paper with a big red X. And if you're smart, you'll go back and see what question you misunderstood. You can't avoid pain, but you can choose the type you endure. There's productive pain, the kind that leads to improvement. And there's pointless pain, the kind that repeats because you refuse to face reality. Getting drunk and throwing up is pointless pain. Saying, I'll never drink like that again, and meaning it, that's productive pain. Investing works the same way. Losing a little money on a mistake can teach you a lifetime of caution. Losing everything teaches you nothing except despair. So stay humble enough to learn from small pains before they grow big. If you ignore the whisper, life will send a scream. I've always believed that pain, when understood, is a form of profit. It refines judgment. It builds patience. It kills arrogance. I don't need to meditate on mountains or chant mantras to stay sane. I just remember how it felt to be nauseated by stupidity, and I avoid repeating it. Every scar you earn honestly becomes a little piece of wisdom. Every mistake you confront openly becomes armor against the next one. So don't run from discomfort. Let it educate you. Let it burn the nonsense out of your mind. In the long run, your pain tolerance determines your growth. And the people who can endure small truths early never have to face big tragedies later. People think complexity means intelligence. It doesn't. Complexity is often just a fancy disguise for confusion. The smartest thing I ever did was keep my life simple. Simple house, simple routine, simple rules. Most people underestimate how much mental clarity they lose chasing luxury. They think they're buying comfort, but they're really buying distraction. I've lived in the same house for about 60 years. It's not small, but it's modest. People ask why I never upgraded to a mansion. The answer is easy. I value peace over prestige. You don't think clearly when your life looks like a showroom. You think clearly when your surroundings stop screaming for attention. A fancy home may impress your guests, but it taxes your brain. Maintenance, decor, security, every upgrade demands more of your time, your focus, your calm. And time and calm are far more valuable than square footage. Simplicity isn't poverty. It's clarity. It's the choice to own only what you can truly use and nothing that ends up owning you. Buffett and I understood that early. He still lives in the same Omaha house he bought in 1958. It's not sentimentality, it's practicality. A steady environment lets you concentrate on what actually matters. Thinking. Because thinking is hard, and it's impossible when your mind is cluttered. The modern world sells you noise disguised as success. Every ad, every influencer, every social feed is screaming, upgrade your life. What they don't say is downgrade your sanity while you're at it. I've seen billionaires with homes so big they need maps to find the bathroom. They wander their own palaces like lost tourists. You think that's success? That's imprisonment with better lighting. Simplicity frees you to focus on judgment, the rarest skill on earth. Judgment requires stillness. You can't see clearly if you're constantly in motion. I've said for years, the first rule of a happy life is low expectations. That's not cynicism, that's strategy. If you stop needing everything to be grand, you start appreciating what already works. That's why I avoid complexity in every area of life, investing, relationships, even diet. Simple systems last longer. Complex ones collapse faster. People ask me why Buffett and I never invested in tech startups, because we didn't understand them well enough to predict their future. We stayed within our circle of competence and left the fireworks to others. That's not fear, that's discipline. Complexity seduces bright minds because it flatters the ego. You think, only I can understand this. That's the trap. Once your self-image depends on appearing smart, you stop making rational decisions. The best investors, thinkers, and builders I've ever met all shared one trait. They loved simplicity. Not minimalism as an aesthetic, but simplicity as a mental weapon. They trimmed the unnecessary until only truth remained. You don't need more time, you need fewer distractions. You don't need more knowledge, you need less nonsense. You don't need more opportunities, you need more focus. Every yes in life comes with a hidden no. Every time you say yes to a new commitment, a new gadget, a new obsession, you're saying no to clarity. And clarity is where sanity lives. That's why I never cared about social image. I wear simple clothes, drive reasonable cars, and eat the same boring meals. I'd rather appear dull and be free than appear dazzling and be miserable. Simplicity also protects you from envy. The moment you start comparing lifestyles, you start losing peace. You stop living for yourself and start performing for spectators. And spectators never go away, they just get louder. There's real joy in not wanting what everyone else wants. That's the secret billionaires rarely admit. Most of them are trapped by their own appetites. They thought wealth would liberate them, but it only expanded their cage. So if you want to stay sane while getting rich, simplify your life relentlessly. Strip away the noise until what's left actually matters. Because the fewer moving parts you have, the fewer things can break. And peace of mind isn't built on what you add, it's built on what you remove. Remember this, the mind functions best when life is boring. And boring, when chosen wisely, is a form of genius. The world calls it dull. I call it sustainable sanity. Most people ruin their lives not by what they say yes to, but by what they fail to say no to. Saying no is the highest form of discipline. It's also the least practiced because it feels uncomfortable. We're trained from childhood to please, to agree, to participate. But the more successful you become, the more dangerous yes becomes. Every yes is a small surrender of time, focus, and sanity. And if you give those away too cheaply, you'll wake up one day rich in money but bankrupt in peace. You want to know my secret to survival? I've said no more times than I can count. I've said no to bad deals, dumb trends, shallow people, and even to good opportunities that didn't fit my temperament. The world calls that boring. I call it filtering. I've always believed that a wise person's life is defined by what he avoids, not what he chases. Refusal is underrated wisdom. You don't need to attend every fight, every party, every deal. You just need to know which ones to skip. The ability to say no grows more valuable the older you get, because as your success compounds, so do your distractions. Everyone wants a piece of you, your attention, your opinion, your money. If you don't set boundaries, they'll set them for you. Buffett and I have had decades of offers that sounded exciting. People waiving contracts, promising quick profits, bragging about the next big thing. We said no to almost all of them. Not because we were pessimists, but because we were focused. And focus requires refusal. It's easier to act busy than to act selective. Busyness looks productive. Selectivity looks lazy. But busyness is the enemy of rational thought. When you're too busy, you don't have time to think. And if you're not thinking, you're gambling. Every no you give protects your ability to think. And thinking clearly is the ultimate competitive advantage. I once told a young investor, the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. He laughed. Then he burned himself out chasing every shiny idea that came his way. He learned the lesson the hard way. Most do. In life and investing, overcommitment kills judgment. You can't weigh decisions properly when you're drowning in obligations. A clear schedule equals a clear mind. That's why I spend most of my time reading and thinking, not rushing around pretending to be important. Important people are usually too distracted to be intelligent. Saying no is also a defense against manipulation. The world is full of people who profit when you can't refuse. Advertisers, salesmen, politicians, even friends who mean well, they all want to hook your emotions. They thrive on your inability to pause. If you want to stay sane, build a reflex of skepticism. When something sounds urgent or irresistible, stop. If it's real, it'll still be there tomorrow. If it's not, you just avoided a mistake. People confuse politeness with weakness. They think saying no is rude. But it's far ruder to waste your life pleasing everyone except yourself. I'm not talking about selfishness. I'm talking about stewardship, guarding your limited attention as if it were money. Because it is. Your time compounds like capital when invested wisely and evaporates when squandered. I've always admired people who could decline gracefully. You ask them for a favor, and they say, I'd love to, but that doesn't fit with my priorities right now. No guilt, no apology, just clarity. Those people live longer and think better. Saying no doesn't mean rejecting the world, it means choosing your world carefully. A smaller circle, but a stronger one. Fewer commitments, but deeper ones. Less noise, more peace. Every no is a statement of who you are. It says, my time is mine, my focus is mine, my sanity is mine. Most people don't fail because they run out of time. They fail because they hand their time to things that don't matter. Saying no is hard at first. But once you learn that nothing collapses when you refuse, it becomes addictive. Because you start realizing how much energy you get back. And energy, not money, is what drives good judgment. If you want to build a sane, successful life, don't collect commitments, collect clarity. And clarity starts with no. In the end, saying no is not rejection. It's self-respect. It's the quiet discipline that keeps your mind sharp and your spirit unpolluted. Remember this: every fool can say yes. It takes real wisdom to say no and mean it. People think compounding only applies to money. They're wrong. Sanity compounds too. Every rational decision adds a small deposit to your mental balance sheet. Every irrational one makes a withdrawal. And if you don't guard that account carefully, you'll go bankrupt long before you run out of cash. I've met countless people who were financially rich but mentally poor. They had money, yes, but their minds were chaos. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't think clearly. They couldn't sit still. They had built empires and lost control of themselves. What good is wealth if it costs you your peace of mind? That's why I call sanity the ultimate dividend. It pays every day in quiet satisfaction, calm judgment, and a lack of regret. And unlike financial dividends, it never gets taxed. You don't have to be a genius to earn it. You just have to be consistent. Rational thinking is a habit-built decision by decision, day by day. You stay calm when others panic. You stay patient when others rush. You stay skeptical when others hype. Over time, those choices create a compounding effect more powerful than any interest rate. Because while everyone else is losing their minds chasing shortcuts, you're quietly building endurance. That endurance, mental, emotional, and moral, is what separates a stable life from a spectacular collapse. Sanity also pays another dividend: clarity. When you think rationally, you waste less energy on nonsense. You stop fighting reality and start cooperating with it. And reality, once you respect it, becomes your ally. Most people treat the world like an opponent to outsmart. They want to beat the system. But the system, nature, markets, human behavior is far older and wiser than you are. The rational person doesn't fight it. He adapts. I learned that long ago. Adaptation beats prediction. The future always surprises you. So stop trying to be clever and start trying to be adaptable. You can't forecast everything, but you can control your reaction to anything. That's rationality in action. The irony is that most of what I call rational thinking is simply the absence of stupidity. You don't need to know the right answer. You just need to avoid the wrong ones. That's how sanity compounds by subtraction, not addition. When people ask me for the key to lifelong success, I tell them this: keep your emotions from corroding your intellect. Greed, envy, and fear, those are mental acids. They dissolve rational thought. You can't think straight when you're angry, envious, or euphoric. You can't invest well either. Rationality isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about not letting them drive the car. You can feel envy, just don't act on it. You can feel fear, just don't surrender to it. That's what Buffett and I practice every day. We're not emotionless robots. We just have better brakes. Sanity, like wealth, depends on control. If you can't control your impulses, your intelligence is useless. It's like having a Ferrari with no steering wheel. So we built systems, mental routines to check ourselves. We ask, what would happen if I'm wrong? We revisit decisions after success and failure alike. We analyze behavior, not outcomes. Because a good process can lead to a bad result, and a bad process can get lucky once, but never forever. That kind of thinking gives you something money can't buy: confidence rooted in reason, not ego. People underestimate how valuable that feeling is. Waking up every morning knowing your life isn't built on quicksand, that's wealth. The ability to sleep soundly because your conscience and your strategy are both clean, that's freedom. I've met billionaires who envy that kind of peace. They'd trade fortunes for it if they could, but sanity doesn't go on sale. You earn it by being rational when it's inconvenient. When markets crash, when life disappoints, when luck runs out, that's when sanity pays its highest dividend, because it keeps you steady while everyone else is running in circles. Rational thinking gives you resilience. It keeps you from turning a temporary loss into a permanent disaster. It stops you from doing something stupid just to feel smart again. That's how sanity compounds. It builds layer upon layer of strength quietly, invisibly, until one day you realize you become unshakable. And when you reach that point, life feels lighter. You stop overreacting to nonsense. You stop fearing downturns. You stop needing approval. You start living on your own terms. And that, believe me, is the richest life there is. The sanity dividend doesn't show up in a bank statement, but it shows up in your tone, your decisions, and your sleep. And if you nurture it, it'll outlast every bull market and every bubble. Here's the truth no one wants to hear. Sanity has a price. You pay it in restraint, humility, and boredom. But it's the best bargain in the world. Everyone wants peace of mind. Few are willing to earn it. They chase excitement, applause, stimulation, and then they wonder why they're exhausted. I never wanted an exciting life. I wanted a calm one. Calm is underrated. Calm lets you think. And clear thinking sustained over a lifetime is the ultimate compounding asset. People confuse noise with progress. They think motion equals momentum. They chase the next deal, the next thrill, the next dopamine hit. Then they call it ambition. But it's just restlessness wearing a suit. The richest life isn't the one with the biggest numbers. It's the one least dependent on external nonsense. And sanity is the currency that buys that life. When I look back, I don't envy anyone who had more money. I envy the few who kept their peace. They understood something profound. Wealth without tranquility is poverty in disguise. You can't enjoy your fortune if your mind is a war zone. You can't appreciate your success if you're still competing with ghosts. You can't live well if you're constantly proving that you do. That's why I've spent my life trying to remove chaos, not accumulate it. I didn't need more possessions. I needed fewer irritations. And every no, every restraint, every moment of quiet thought added to my real fortune. The older I got, the more obvious it became. The true measure of wealth is control. Control over your time. Control over your emotions. Control over your environment. You don't need to own the world just yourself. That's enough. People sometimes ask if I ever regret not having more. More money, more fame, more luxury. I tell them no, because I also missed out on more stupidity, more envy, and more headaches. That's a fair trade. Most people lose their sanity because they never decide what enough means. They let society set their finish line, and society keeps moving it. If you don't define enough, you'll chase ghosts forever. You'll work longer, risk dumber, and live shorter. That's not success. That's self-destruction on a delay timer. Wealth, properly understood, is the ability to stop, to say, this is sufficient, to walk away from the game while you can still smile. If you can't do that, the game owns you. When I talk about staying sane, people think it's some philosophical ideal. It's not. It's survival. Because every loss of sanity begins as a small compromise with reason. A little ego here, a little envy there, and suddenly you build a life that runs you instead of the other way around. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's not hard to get rich. It's hard to stay rational. And once you lose rationality, no amount of money can buy it back. So the question isn't, how rich can I become? It's how calm can I remain while wealth grows? That's the real challenge, because money amplifies everything you are. If you're foolish, it makes you reckless. If you're vain, it makes you unbearable. If you're sane, it makes you freer. Sanity is the ultimate leverage. It multiplies your judgment, your time, your happiness. It allows you to enjoy wealth instead of being enslaved by it. I've known too many people who traded their sanity for speed. They wanted to arrive faster, but forgot to ask where they were going. Most of them ended up lost. The irony of life is that slow, deliberate thinking usually wins the race. Not because it's glamorous, but because it doesn't crash. If you want to live well, learn to step back. Learn to pause before reacting. Learn to think before leaping. That's where sanity hides, in the spaces between impulses. I've said this many times. The world is not crazy because it's evil. It's crazy because it's impatient. Everyone wants shortcuts. But wisdom is the long road walked slowly. And sanity is what keeps you walking when everyone else is sprinting in circles. So, as you go through life, remember this simple formula. Avoid stupidity. Stay calm. Think independently. And never forget that peace of mind is the real compound interest. You don't need to be extraordinary to live well. You just need to remain sane in a world that rewards madness. That's the ultimate success story. Not the man who won the most, but the man who lost his mind the least.